Hi, welcome to Oma's Kitchen.
Oregano.
Salvadoran pupusas take a little bit of prep work the day before, but these little meat and cheese-filled corn pancakes are so worth it. On the day before I make them, day one, I put together the Curtido, which is the spicy, sweet, fermented slaw that goes on top. I prepare that the day before and I put it in the refrigerator. I've already posted the video on that one, and I will link it to the description for this video. I also prepare the meat the day before. I sear off either pork or chicken, 4 to 5 pounds of it, and then I put it in the crock pot for 4 to 5 hours until it's fall apart tender. The good thing about that is I use half of the meat that evening for sandwiches, and I save 2 to 3 pounds of the meat for the next day when I'm ready to make the pupusas. Searing it off helps hold in the flavor and juices, and I put in some spices and hatch green chilies in the crock pot and let it all cook down together with a little bit of broth. I save a bit of the broth from the crock pot and I store the meat in the refrigerator until the next day. It's tender and flavorful, and I'm able to pull it apart into strips and heat it up in my frying pan. But before we deal with the meat, we're going to make the dough for the pupusas. You should be able to find this masa mix in your local grocery store. It's the same one used for tamales. This makes a wonderful corn dough. I mix half of this dough recipe at a time for 2 reasons. One, it's less likely to dry out and it keeps its moisture so I can form it into pancakes if I split it into 2 separate batches of the dough. And 2, the recipe makes a lot of dough. I mean, you're going to end up with something like 40 to 60 pupusas at the end of this, and so making it in 2 batches really helps. Splitting the recipe in half makes it fit into my giant mixing bowl too. So I have put in 3.5 cups of the masa mix, 1 tablespoon of salt, and I'm going to put in 2 teaspoons of onion powder and a teaspoon of chili powder. And other than warm water, this is it for the masa dough recipe. This is half of it. While I whisk together the dry ingredients before adding the water, I will put the full recipe up here for you. Now this recipe is for 2 to 3 pounds of meat, whether you're using boneless chicken breasts or pork tenderloin or whatever. This will give you enough dough to make 40 to 60 pupusas. And for us, it's enough to have 2 nights of dinner and share a little bit with the neighbors. I make a little hole in the center of the dough and pour water that I've warmed in the microwave into the center and then blend it in. Now I start out with about 2¼ cups of water, and I see how dry my dough is. I usually have to add another 1/4 to 1/2 cup of warm water to get the soft, pliable dough I'm looking for. Mix it together well and give the flour a moment to absorb all of the water. What you want to end up with is a dough that's pliable enough that you can turn it into pancakes, and it will hold together but it won't stick to your hands. So make sure that you can actually work with it a little bit without it breaking up in your hand. If it does break up or crumble in your hand, add some more water. You're looking for a nice soft dough. Cover it over with plastic wrap and leave it to sit on the counter for about 15 or 20 minutes while you make the filling for your pupusas. The meat comes out so tender that all I really need is a fork to pull it apart and put it into my non-stick frying pan. I'm also going to add some more hatch chilies to it, and I'm going to add about a half a cup of the broth to the meat in the frying pan. The reason I'm doing this is so that we don't end up with very dry meat in the center of the pupusas. We want the meat to absorb some of the broth before we make the filling. Then I add the green chilies, some salt, some chili powder, and because my guys like things a little spicy, I add a little bit of chipotle powder on top too. It's pretty spicy though, so I don't add too much. These spices are all to our taste. You could play around a little with the spices and see what you like. I'm going to cover it over and cook it over medium heat for only about 5 or 10 minutes, just enough to let the meat absorb all of that moisture. And you can see here when I take the lid off and stir it, there's no more broth in the bottom of the pan. It smells so good. These are the times I wish it was smell-o-vision. I've let the meat cool off for a couple of minutes, and now I run it through my food processor. I'm turning it into a filling, so I want smaller bits of meat that I can mix with some cheese. Once I've processed all the meat, I put it into a medium bowl. I've got some extra sharp aged cheddar here, along with some regular sharp cheddar. I think it's about 2 cups of cheese. Really, you can add as much cheese to this as you want. It's really only for your personal taste. I'm processing the cheese into smaller bits as well, so that it will mix well with the meat filling. Cover over the filling mixture so that it can hang on to its moisture too. And then we're ready to assemble the pupusas. These round pieces of parchment paper came with my tortilla press. Now you don't have to have a tortilla press to make pupusas. I like using it because it really speeds up the process. But you can use square pieces of parchment paper and a rolling pin. And once you have put the filling into the dough and flattened it out, you can use your rolling pin to roll out the pupusas. Use parchment paper on both sides. Make sure you wash your hands really well first too. A piece of the parchment goes into my tortilla press, and then I get a heaping spoonful, kitchen spoonful. I guess it comes out to about 2 tablespoons full of dough. And I work it a little bit to get it nice and soft. Once it is, you can press your fingers into the center to make a cup out of your dough. I kind of pinch the sides and it becomes this nice rounded cup. Then I get about a heaping tablespoon of the filling and I put it into the center of that cup and press it down with my thumb. Pull the spoon out. And then your nice soft dough will pinch over the top. So I work with it a little bit, pinching it closed as I go. And once you've done this a little bit, it gets softer. And you can work the dough up around the filling and pinch it closed on top. Now I'm doing this really slowly for the camera. When I'm making these just for us and I'm not filming myself, I can do this pretty quickly. The tortilla press helps because if you're pressing them down by hand and then rolling them out between parchment with a rolling pin, it does take longer. The tortilla press really speeds up the process. I put another piece of parchment on top and push down on it a little bit. Squeeze the press shut. And what I end up with is this really flat pancake. And you can see little bits of cheese and meat in there, and that's okay. Those crisp up in the frying pan and become our favorite part of the pupusas. I just lay them out on a cookie sheet covered in aluminum foil. And once I have a few done, I get the frying process going. But let me show you another one. Just kind of pinch the sides and make a cup. Okay. And then a heaping tablespoon of the filling. Press it down in there with your thumb. Sorry, it's almost off camera there. Pinch the sides up over the filling. It's a really nice soft dough and it's easy to work with. It's actually kind of fun to make them. Then I kind of flatten it in my hand a little bit and use my tortilla press to make a nice flat pancake. If you see a spot where the filling is poking out a little bit, just pinch it shut and flatten it in your hand. And then flatten it out either with the tortilla press or a rolling pin, sandwiched between parchment paper. I don't press down all the way to make it as thin as a tortilla, but it is pretty thin. I want to show you this up close. If I can get it in the camera here. You can see the edges where the cheese is hanging out a little bit or spots where the meat is showing up. That's okay. Those will caramelize in the pan and give it extra flavor. It's wonderful. Now that I have a few done, let me show you the frying process. I've got a non-stick griddle here, but you could use a non-stick frying pan, just whatever you have. And you're going to want to take a little bit of canola oil and just sort of brush it around on your non-stick surface. I put it over medium-high heat and get the oil sizzling a little bit, and then the first pupusas go on there. They fluff up a little bit as they're cooking. And you can see where the cheese is caramelizing some. That's some of the most excellent flavor right there. Once they've browned on both sides, you can remove them from the pan and start to pile them up. And they're beautiful. I put a little oil on the pan again. And then the next two pupusas go on. If I wasn't doing this for the camera, I would do 3 or 4 at a time. That's the cool part about the griddle. I'll show you what the inside looks like. So there's the, when you break it open, ow, 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 it's hot, it's hot. I want to show you the layer of meat and cheese in there. Oh my God. It is so good. Wow. There we go. You have to try your product. Here's that beautiful Curtido slaw we made yesterday. It's had time to ferment and bring out all of the flavors in the refrigerator overnight. And I know you only see about 6 or 7 pupusas in the background there, but this recipe makes 40 to 60 pupusas. Isn't it beautiful?
Yum. I know, right?
Yeah.
I love it when you make close.
And here we are, Salvadoran Pupusas and Curtido. Thank you for joining me in Oma's Kitchen. If you enjoyed the video, please don't forget to like and subscribe. I'll upload more tasty videos soon, and a special shout out to Moon Pie and Lil Bit. Till next time.
Oregano.